Good morning. This is Thursday, June the 4th. This is the third day of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners budget workshops to discuss the budget deliberations for fiscal year 2021. And Chairman McLaughlin, I will turn it over to you remotely via Zoom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. Again, as the manager said, welcome to our Thursday morning budget workshop meeting, and is scheduled to be our final one if things goes as planned. At this time, we're going to ask Madam Clerk to do the roll call, please.
Good morning, Chairman McLaughlin.
Present.
Vice Chair
Here.
Colson. Commissioner Albright.
Here.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick.
Here.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins.
Here.
Commissioner Nunley.
Here.
Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. At this time, accordingly, Mr. Manager, do you have any follow-up comments before we introduce our first speaker, Dr. Ethan Linker?
We do have some follow-up items for yesterday on the budget, unless there's any other matters the board wanted to bring up first. We did hear from Commissioner Albright regarding some budget questions. I'm going to turn over to Brian. He has prepared some answers in consultation with me to his questions. We'd like to present those to you. They're directly related to budget.
Very good.
Good morning, everyone. We did receive quite a bit of comments during the meeting, and then after the meeting, Commissioner Albright did submit several questions, and I just wanted to run through it. Feel free if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to answer. I'm going to start off with the solid waste fund. I know Commissioner Floyd Huggins had asked to see specifically if we looked at some of our fees and increasing some of the fees in relation to the household fee, what those dollar amounts would look like. So instead of showing you a matrix of increasing certain fees here and there, what I wanted to show you is the different categories of fees that we have in solid waste, what the current rate for those fees are, and what we are currently proposing. And then basically in the third column, you'll see where it says $1 increase. If you were to increase any one of those fees an additional $1, assuming in the far right-hand column where you see the tonnage, assuming we were to hit those amount of tons next fiscal year, for example, on the commercial non-residential tipping fee, which is $48, and we're proposing going to $50. If you were to increase that proposed $50 by one more dollar, and you were to hit 43,000 tons next year, you would be looking at an additional $43,000 of revenue. So if you look at all the different categories, commercial, C&D, concrete, pallet, and shingles, if each one were to increase by $1 and we were able to hit the tonnage in the far right, you would generate an additional $88,450. Compared to the household fee, for each dollar that you go up above the $7.17 a month, you generate $923,928. So this would give you, if any of you wanted to play around or suggest any type of additional changes to what we propose, this would give you some type of blueprint of what you would be looking at from a revenue standpoint on the tipping side, assuming we hit the tonnage. With any tipping fee, obviously, as tons go up, revenue goes up, but at the same token, as tons go up, so does the expense to haul off to Bertie County, goes up on the county side. So we did run multiple analysis, and I should have said this yesterday, but when we started this process of looking at the solid waste fees, I ran an analysis, and Tim Corley and John Demery ran an analysis, and we actually wanted to see how close our numbers came together, and eerily, we were spot on in our dollar amounts. Even though we took two different routes to get to these proposed fees, we pretty much ended at the same exact spot. Another question that came up yesterday in regards to solid waste and recycling fee was we wanted to look at a comparison of the household rate in relation to the decrease. As you know, we are recommending a revenue neutral tax rate. And because the solid waste fee and the tax fee are on the same bill, for a lot of people, they look at that as a total amount that they have to pay to the county. So we were asked, what's the difference We were actually asked on a $100,000 home, but I thought it was more relevant to look at it from the median property value of $165,200. So if you look on the left, that's our current setup with the tax rate at 0.721 and the household fee at $6.17 a month. And you can see on the total that particular property would pay $1,265.13. On that same property at that same value at the proposed new tax rate of 0.6797 and the $10 per month solid waste fee, that particular property on an annual basis would pay $1,242.86. So in this particular scenario at $165,200, this particular property would save $22.27 over the entire annual year on their actual bill that they receive from the county. I mean, obviously we could run multiple properties. This scenario is going to look different depending on the value of the property, what the savings could be and may not be. But again, we wanted to give you some starting point of what the potential savings could be based on the decrease in the tax rate, even though we are proposing to increase the solid waste fee. Third item that was asked yesterday was the actual cost that we have spent on ECVC over the last few years. So we went back to 2014. 2014 was very minimum, about $35,000. 2015 looks like the county ate most of the cost. Well, actually ECVC ate the cost. And then going from 16 until now, we've pretty much hovered around that $150,000 range. And then with the increased cost of recycling, not only from the ECVC, but also just the market conditions that we're seeing, you can see that the budget for 2021 does increase up to $600,000.
Brian, if I can point out, we do, there's two operations that we actually employ the ECVC workers at. Obviously, at the recycling center is one primary location. The other is at the actual transfer station on the C&D, the construction demolition picking line. So we probably have a close to an equal number, I think, in between both sites.
Right, and the picking line is actually a separate line item, so these numbers would actually go up a little bit higher, but we were looking just more at the tipping fee. The folks on the C&D line are considered temporary workers under contract. But what I do want to point out is that these numbers do not show in-kind contributions. If that C&D facility has any issues, the county comes in. The county also partners with ECVC if they have any particular issues, primarily in regards to large, heavy equipment. The county does service. The county provides in some cases if they have machinery that goes down. Obviously, we want to keep them running because we want to be good partners in recycling. So we do work with them as needed. And those dollars do not show up on here because it could be a couple times a year. It could be multiple times a year. It's just hard to tell exactly when we, in essence, loan or help with equipment. This next slide was primarily some questions that Commissioner Albright had and wanted to see what the numbers looked like. So what I wanted to show you was the physician extender position in public health. As you saw Tuesday, that particular position is tied to our infant mortality program. Now, what you'll see in that right-hand column is basically county dollars. That position is closer to around $127,000 when you do salaries, benefits, uniforms, desks, all those costs rolled into one. But because of the nature of that program, we can receive funding from Medicaid, the Department of Human Health Services from the state. And I believe there may even be some federal dollars tied into that. So that $128,000 only cost the county $60,251.04. You also saw from DSS, there are 5 critical positions. The manager is recommending funding of one of those positions, but Commissioner Albright did want to see what the cost would be if we were to fund the additional 4. I know in the presentation, the dollar amount was around $108,000. That was the county's portion if we just were to look at salaries. But there's also additional costs by adding these 4 positions. So that's why you see the county cost in the $237,959 range. if we were to add on those 4 positions, which is still only a fraction of what the total cost of all 4 positions is going to be based on the funding mechanisms that are available by having these particular people in the particular areas that they work in. But that's the county cost. And then finally, yesterday, Sheriff Nance did ask for 2 deputies to help with additional district court that's coming next fiscal year. Each deputy, even if the county only did 1, but we wanted to show you per deputy, and the full amount is $76,824,000 per deputy, or $153,648 for both. Those are 100% county cost. There's no other funding mechanism for those type of positions, even though the district court is more or less mandated. Those are costs that the county would have to incur if we were to decide to fund those positions. And then finally, if you looked at all 3 categories combined, you're at $451,558. Financially, a piece of the one thing I would want to leave you with because of the unknown of COVID-19, really, I'm really at a point where, from a professional level and a comfort level, if we were to change any revenue, it would probably be our property tax, because it's our more set revenue. It's more reliable than our rest. I understand with COVID-19, we will have folks that are going to have an issue paying property taxes, just like they're having issues paying their utilities and everything else. But it is our one place if we had to increase the revenue. And if we were to take this $451,858, you'd be looking at a 0.32 additional increase on the 0.7697, unless you go the other way and you remove $451,858 from our expenses. So unless I can, between now and the public hearing, I get better data to help support the other revenues, which we're just now starting to get the March and April revenues in. We'll close out May next week, so I'll have some indication of those revenues. With COVID-19 and the unknown, it's difficult on the revenue side to make any type of even a 6-month projection. But I did want to show you what that looks like, just so you have something to think about and to look at. That being said,
So Brian,
any questions?
if you go back to that last slide, so if you take his 0.32 cent tax, if you add that to the revenue neutral 67.97, you'd be at a rate of 68.29. So you'd be right under 4 cents in terms of reduction still. It'd be a net effect of 3.89 cent reduction, going from the 72.10 down to a 68.29, just a point of reference. The other thing we had one other follow-up yesterday from Commissioner Nunley, who was asking budgetarily from a cost standpoint, the potential cost to remove the monument at the courthouse. And I've assigned that to our county engineer, Tim Corley. He's been in contact with a couple of, I guess, quote unquote, monument movers, and we're trying to get our hands around that right now. We don't have any firm cost on that to give you, but engineering is working on that to answer that question.
Very, very
Mr.
good.
Manager and Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-up item also, please.
Okay, Commissioner Copeland.
All right. Yesterday, after the meeting, walking out the door, and all last night, I was communicating with county employees. The people that called me, not one of them objected to what I was saying yesterday. Every one of them thinks the policy for the masks is a bit too harsh. And that's where my opinion yesterday was, that we county commissioners should have looked at the wording and proposed potentially some modifications to it. Given the outpouring, and yesterday the question was asked of the manager, how many people did he hear complaint from? And he said one. The county attorney said that she'd heard a couple. Well, I've heard many, many more than that. I've been in touch with 2 of my other fellow commissioners, and they too have had an outpouring. So what I would like to propose, to make a motion, this is a motion, that we conduct an anonymous survey of all the county employees and get their opinion as to the policy that for masks as it is now. I think the wording can be tweaked to where everybody can be satisfied. I think it ought to add in there social distancing and or masks as appropriate so that we can have adults making decisions that are proper for a given situation. The people that I talked to last night and out the door, they told me that they didn't like being treated like a child. Some said they were afraid. In fact, I would say almost all of them said they were afraid to voice their opinion to the county manager or their director of staff of their department because they were afraid that they'd get some kind of negative connotation associated with their name. One person said they felt like they were humiliated by the policy. Others said it was embarrassing. Another said it's just another COVID slap in the face. And then I can't tell you the amount of anger and emotion that these people expressed. So please, I'd like to see an independent survey done of all county employees and let's get their opinion. I've been a manager of a company. I've been a manager of large divisions. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies before, had many, many people. And one of the things that I've learned over all the years that I was in business, that employee morale is important. Employee opinion is important. And so I think we need to get the feedback. I may be surprised, and I'm not afraid of the truth. If it comes back and 80% of the people are saying, hey, we're gung-ho in support of this, well, so be it. But quite frankly, from what I've heard, I haven't heard anybody, not one person, come up to me and say that they like this mask policy as it is now written. Anyway, I'd like to ask if somebody would second that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you can see the screen, but you have Commissioner White, Fitzpatrick, and Nunley, and Perkins Williams' hands are up.
Okay. Commissioner Nunley?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I believe at this point, any reconsideration of this matter is out of order. Pursuant to our rules, this could be taken up 60 days, but I briefly comment. I hope that we're communicating clearly. Staff's not a punishment. This is that we are taking steps, and I think Mr. Elliott has taken steps to ensure that Pitt County is a safe work environment for our employees. Wearing a mask, and say it again, and I think we need to continue to say it, it's not a punishment to wear a mask. This helps protect those that are working around you. And it's a big change, but this makes Pitt County the safest place to work during a pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic. But that aside, efforts to keep that safe workplace, this motion to reconsider is out of order. And I move that any reconsideration be tabled until 60 days pursuant to our rules.
Thank you. Commissioner White?
Yes, I'm going to second Tom's motion because this is not saying that we are trying to vote against the policy. This is simply just saying that we want to give the employees an opportunity to voice their opinion on this mandate that's being imposed on them. I have also received a bunch of people reaching out to me, and it was also brought to my attention after our meeting yesterday when someone asked Scott how many people he had go to him with a complaint. The email about the mandate was sent out Tuesday at 3:38, but because of things going on in Greenville, the employees were sent home around 3 or 3:30 before the email even came out. And then Scott was in the budget meeting starting at 8 o'clock yesterday and again at 8 o'clock today. So even employees that would feel comfortable voicing their complaints and their concerns didn't even have the opportunity to do so in that time frame. So I'm going to second Commissioner Colson's motion to do a survey to allow for employee input.
Okay, thank you. Was that Commissioner Floyd Huggins?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman McGawhorn. I'm going to second Chris or motion and ask our attorney to rule on that, whether we are out of order or not.
Very good. Was there another hand before we get to that point? Was there another hand up, Mr. Manager?
Yes, you have Commissioner Fitzpatrick and Perkins Williams.
Okay, Commissioner Fitzpatrick. Commissioner Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was waiting to be unmuted. I would like to thank Commissioner Perkins Williams. I received a email that she forwarded to me, I believe from Dr. Silvernail, regarding the masking policy. And I quote, this is from Dr. Silvernail: "If we undertake some sort of masking policy, I would prefer that it was strongly encouraged rather than required or mandated. It is unenforceable, and the implementation of the unenforceable rules diminishes the credibility of government." So I would be in support of Mr. Colson's motion. I think it's important to hear from our employees.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Perkins Williams.
I was going to second Commissioner Colson's recommendation, because to have the opportunity to speak is good. However, I have worked in government for most of my adult life, and regardless of how I felt, I expressed to my superior my reason in being in the position that I was in. But you know, I want to say one thing to Commissioner White. When things come in at the last minute, I like to be reasonable. And I think Commissioner Colson's suggestion would be good, because those people who don't feel that they can speak to their superior, I like to have their anonymous a reply to it. But you didn't do that for that lady as it relates for her quality of life. And I only asked for 1 month. So I like to see this board be a little more open about all things as it relates to people's quality of life. So I'm voting with Tom Colson's motion.
Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one comment before she makes a comment? I do want to tell the board that following Monday's board meeting, when you discussed this initial topic and directed me to develop the policy, I did send out a courtesy email to all the county employees. I believe it was Tuesday morning, just as a heads up that this action had taken and that I would be developing the policy and that would be coming forward. And that was the Tuesday at 3:38, whatever time that was, that by the time we were able to develop the policy and vet it internally with management team, that was then sent out. So I didn't want this to be just put on the employees in an email without them having some heads up, because I was sure that they had heard of the discussion with the workforce at the Monday 9 a.m. meeting.
So you're saying you did give them a heads up?
Yes, sir. And actually, before we sent the 338 policy out, we sent out to the department heads first to say, hey, this is coming. Then maybe following that, I don't know if it was half an hour later, then we sent a blast out to the entire workforce with the policy attached. So it's really 3 emails: one to all the employees Tuesday, kind of a heads up, hey, this is coming down the pike. And then Tuesday, when we actually sent out the policy to department heads, then the entire workforce.
Thank you very much. Madam Attorney, I think there was a question posed to you.
Yes, good morning. I understand there's a question about whether or not the motion to reconsider is out of order in its timing. And my response would be that obviously the chairman ultimately determines the rules of procedure based upon advice of the attorney as parliamentarian. I don't find that this motion on the floor is a motion to reconsider for purpose of modifying a prior vote, in that it is requesting something that's new. My understanding of the motion is that it's not addressing the policy that's been adopted. It's requesting that a survey be sent out to employees. And so I think that is sufficiently different to withstand a challenge as to it being a motion to reconsider. If there is any area of potential challenge, I think that might have needed to have been raised yesterday as to the appropriateness of addressing masking during a special meeting that is set aside for budget discussions. And so this, as a pursuant to your rules of procedure and pursuant to general statute, special meetings are held for the purpose for which they're advertised. And this was advertised as a budget workshop. And so there being no objection or request for clarification yesterday, I think the door was opened to discuss masking without objection yesterday. And so I think in light of that, it would be inconsistent to rule it out of order today. But to me, that would be the only potential legal basis for the chairman's consideration. If that makes sense, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Mr. Chairman, you also have one new hand up, Commissioner Ward, and you have a repeat hand up from Commissioner Nunley.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Yes. My question is, one question is, and I hope I can have it answered, how long would it take to do this survey? When is our next commissioners meeting, for instance?
Monday, June the 15th at 6 p.m. is your next scheduled meeting.
Okay. And how long would it take to get the survey together and get every employee's response, do you think?
From the anonymous standpoint, I'm going to kind of look at Mike Taylor in terms of the technology. Is that something we could turn around quickly, Mike?
Use SurveyMonkey.
Okay.
You could use
Yes.
SurveyMonkey and do it immediately.
So Mike is indicating yes, and Commissioner Colson, so yes. So we could turn around quickly.
Okay, like by the first of next week, at that time, would we call a meeting? In other words, I had been thinking that at our next meeting that I was going to propose that we bring this down a notch and put this in the hands of our employees. I think many of them had already been masking. I think that if we just word this a little bit differently and, make our suggestions as it's stated in this, I asked the manager to send me the actual temporary policy for wearing of face coverings for the county. And I think just by tweaking it a little bit, it's a strong recommendation that we do it, but still leave it up to the individual. And that was what I was thinking that we could do at our next Monday's meeting. I don't know how it'll be received and how the vote will go, but I think by the time we do a survey, get the information back, meet again, talk about it, that we can talk about that at our next meeting and get that
Mr.
done.
Chairman, if I can interject, we had a 1 o'clock call yesterday with our COVID-19 community partners, municipalities, plus other agencies. And we had 9 of the 10 municipalities on the call. I think only the town of Falkland was not able to participate. And we did pose the question as to the people on the call were the managers as to whether they felt that their town council, city council, board of aldermen, whatever it's called, would be imposing any requirement for their employees to have masks. And then would they support, as I was asked to inquire, would they support a community county-wide, or would their jurisdiction join in on a county effort? And basically the indication, a lot of them said they couldn't speak their councils, they hadn't met yet, they would be meeting, they had met, but overall the response was no on both accounts.
Would you repeat that? I didn't understand these.
So they basically said that no, they would not be requiring their employees to mask, and that no, that the indication this wasn't a firm, but from their feeling of what they had talked with, they knew their board sentiments, that they would not be requiring their employees to mask, that they felt like the appropriate social distancing guidelines that are out there, that they had put those before the employees, just like I had with our organization, as well as in terms of if the county were to issue an order for the unincorporated areas of the county to quote unquote, require our citizens to mask. They said that the indication was, again, I'm using the word indication, was that they would not be joining in on that effort. Janice, am I representing that correctly, would you say?
Yes, I
Thank
was
you.
there for the call.
Very good. Commissioner Nunley.
Yeah, so I guess my motion to be clear, it does appear that this is not a motion to reconsider the initial thing, and so I would on masking. So I think it's good to hear from our employees, and if it's not doesn't cause too much heartburn to get something out like that, I certainly am not opposed to running a cursory survey. What I think though that we need to be mindful of is what position this, the broader policy position of any time our county manager at our recommendation implements a policy during a national emergency, whether or not we're going to have a practice of surveying the employees of whether or not they're comfortable with those policies when when those decisions are made based on the safety of the employees. And I think that we just need to keep in mind that Walmart Corporation, Starbucks International, a number of major employers have just done this temporarily to ensure the safety not only of the patrons that are serviced by the employees of those organizations, but also to ensure that their workforce can continue to operate throughout the course of the pandemic. And this is not about panic. We need to be clear that in our speaking with the employees of Pitt County, that this allows us to continue to work and service our community. It's a very small ask, and what it does, it keeps us from having to sequester and isolate potentially an entire work group for 14 days in the event that they've been deemed contacted by someone that's COVID positive, because the risk is so much lowered when someone's masked. So I think that it's really easy for us to get caught up in this I guess panic speak with regards to masking and what it is. It's really all of us doing our part as citizens, as courteous citizens to our neighbors, to make sure, because we don't know if we're infected, that we're making sure that our work partners are safe. And if that is a policy during the course of the pandemic, that's going to continue to allow Pitt County to operate as a safe work environment. Our employees can feel safe coming to work. Those that may have pre-existing medical conditions can feel safe and not feel pressured or feel bizarre or stigmatized for wearing a mask. The masks we're talking about are not to protect you. They're to protect other people from you potentially infecting them. And so that's why I think that we've really got to strongly consider as a board that in the state of a national emergency, which is still in effect, and state emergency, which is still in effect, are we going to open up? And it may not be that big of a deal. Maybe we do need to hear. And I think it's good for the employees to give feedback, but we also need to, as a management team, communicate, what this is all about, that there's no stigma attached. And, hear it here across the United States, and Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, for crying out loud, who a lot of people view or surprised to frankly hear that he's come out so strongly in favor of masking as a courtesy to the other people because of his position in the Republican Party. So I think we've just got to be very, very mindful of that. And so our messaging to our employees has to be, look, this policy in the first instance is to make it a safe work environment for you. This is not a punishment. This is not to hurt you. And we're not asking you to wear a mask when you're by yourself. We're asking you to have one handy so you can pop it on if you're speaking to someone in the public. If you're, and frankly, it'd be great if someone that's coming in to see our employees is wearing a mask, because that really mitigates that risk, and just makes, and I know that some may not believe that there's a risk, but there is one. Okay, we're still in a national pandemic, a worldwide pandemic, and with a threat of resurgence. So I'll just leave my comments at that. I'm not opposed to a survey, but I just think we need to be mindful of what that means. But certainly I hope that the employees of Pitt County feel open, they can openly communicate, and there needs to be a cross dialogue here, because ultimately the goal needs to be keep our workforce safe, keep us at work, keep everyone working throughout the pandemic. And masking's been proven to be one of the most effective measures to do that. And if we can get 70 to 80% compliance voluntarily, great. I mean, it doesn't I guess it doesn't matter how we get there. It's just that we get there. And so I think scientists are recommending governments to put mandates out there, because mandates typically compel more compliance. And I think we've already seen that. We've seen that across the world. So I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay.
You have 4 hands up. Perkins,
4 hands.
Williams, Ward, Albright, and Floyd Huggins.
Okay. Commissioner Floyd Huggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what Chris said. Everything that he said. The management, we are the management team. I also I agree with enforcement. I don't think that, the question that was raised about enforcement by Dr. Silvernail, suggestion. I don't think the intention is to go around and arrest anybody or give a person a bad evaluation for not wearing it, a mask. But with all of this, and we're talking about doing a survey and all, what if we just, I'm willing to say, encourage. I'm willing to use the word encourage, so we can move forward and on this issue and get to what we're supposed to be meeting about. And I feel like if we use the word encourage, those who don't want to wear a mask, then if they feel safe and don't care about their people around them, then don't wear one. And I hate to say it this way, but I will support using the word encourage, so we can move on and we can stop coming back to issues that we already voted on and spending time on it when we should be spending time on the budget. I'm sorry that we didn't recognize yesterday and Tuesday when things come up that we that we're not supposed to be talking about, because it was advertised this is a budget workshop. So if changing the wording to encourage would help, I'm willing to accept that wording if we can use that and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Huggins. Commissioner White.
I don't believe I raised my hand, but if I did, it was by accident. But are we still, is the motion still on the floor to do an anonymous survey for the employees?
Yes, that's on the floor, but
Yeah.
we'll repeat that back by our attorney in a second.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Was a motion of Commissioner Huggins I would like to second that, and I would like us to take a vote.
Okay, Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Make a motion, did she?
She rephrases it.
Okay, Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize we are operating under undue circumstances, but I want to say there is a pandemic out, and Chris is right about that. But I also don't like being taking a point. I'm still on board with Tom as far as getting an input from the people, because I didn't get the thing until yesterday, and I've stated that because there's a pandemic, our community doesn't seem to realize that there should be either the mask or the social distancing because of the asymptomatic and because of the underlying problems that people have. So I've had to wiggle between both of them. I've been wearing a mask since I went to DC for the legislative conference, because they had one at the legislative conference and the lady gave it to me. It was an N195, but I sent it to my granddaughter because she is on a machine, and I gave it to her in New York because she was dealing with the hospital. But I got 2 or 3 masks from here because people wanted me to have them, and I have had it on ever since. So I want you to know there is a pandemic, but some people will walk up on you and then you don't have a mask on. So I either have to leave or move on rather than causing frictions and problems. There is a pandemic, and Pitt County residents doesn't seem to recognize it. I do. So I'm trying to do what is best for people who are aged, for people who have underlying problems, and for people who are sensitive. That's why I want to do that. I'm trying not to be rigid. I want the county people to feel encouraged to speak up, and they're not encouraged to speak up to Scott. Then send it to your manager. I worked in government all of my life, and I didn't have a problem and then I was the only one that looked like me at points. So I want you to be encouraged to speak up. That's the only way I will know. And I do ask people in the public, and I do reach out to the community that I represent because they trust me. I want you to know I'm going to vote with Tom. His motion was to let the people speak up, and then I like to see Scott report it. Get it from the department heads. Come on, we are humans, we are adults, and we should be sensible managers. I didn't get this things. Kimberly sent it to me yesterday, and I got it just before all of our internet went out over here. We didn't have internet until sometime after I had gone to bed, and I told my house guests, I'll get it in the morning. So I didn't sleep well, and I got it this morning, and I'm going with Tom. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there's a question as to whether we've got a second to a motion that I think that is assumed by Floyd Huggins regarding changing the policy.
I think we need to clarify whether or not
from-
a motion was in fact made
Yes,
before we accept the second.
yes, that's what I was trying to do.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like, since I made the original motion to do the survey, and after hearing what Commissioner Huggins said, I kind of thought, well, maybe that's where she was headed, but she didn't actually say make a motion. But when I was talking with people last night, I substituted the word required with something to the order of, well, what if it said something to the order of social distancing and or masks as appropriate for the given situation, thus giving the employee an ability to be able to control their environment. And every one of them was okay with that. So if we could reword, and that was what I was arguing yesterday, if we could just reword the policy slightly and give a little bit more common sense control to adults that we have working for us, I believe that everybody will be happy, and I would be happy with that.
Okay. I think we discussed this enough. Commissioner Nunley, if I hear you correctly, you had no problem in terms of supporting this motion by Commissioner Colson in reference to having a survey. I understand and certainly understand what Commissioner Nunley wanted to do in terms of the safety and well-being of our employees at a time when this is a very serious matter. But also understanding that we want our employees to have their input. And if I'm hearing you correctly, Commissioner Nunley, you withdraw your motion to support the employee survey.
That's correct. And I think
I may interrupt, Mr. Chair. I don't have a motion on the floor from Mr. Nunley. I have an objection related to procedure, but I didn't have a motion. I had a second, but it didn't attach to a motion. So I need clarification as to whether or not there is a motion and what that motion is.
That is not a motion. That is not a motion.
No, yeah, that's correct, Madam Attorney. And I was just going to withdraw my objection to moving forward with the survey, the procedural objection formally, and just call the question on it. I think it would be good to hear from our county employees about what's going to make the environment safer, and then at Tom's suggestion and the other members, what language is going to be best to get us where we need to be on this. So I would be in support of where Tom sits on that.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, you still have 4 hands up, but also we still have this assumed motion that was seconded as a substitute. We don't know if that was a motion or not by Commissioner Floyd Huggins to change the word from required to encouraged, or the wording that Vice Chairman Colson was proposing.
Okay. I think if I understand it correct, Commissioner Huggins wanted to have it so that it's not a mandate. The requiring was a term that she used. Technically, Madam Attorney and Scott, can we come up with, and I think Tom has some suggested words. Can we come up with some words that the manager and our attorney can agree upon, and so we can move forward with this?
Yes, but I would recommend to change it from the required to an encouraged, and to go that route. But I will, if the board wants to stick with the required, I will make sure the workforce that we keep that before the workforce. But I would.
Scott, do you object to what the proposal of wording that I have?
No, that's appropriate.
I just think that explains it a little bit better.
So is there a second to that motion?
What motion?
To Floyd Huggins' motion to change?
What is the motion?
I think we need to ask Commissioner Floyd Huggins if she made a motion. Would be my recommendation.
Commissioner Huggins, was that a motion or was that a suggestion?
Well, it was a suggestion, and I should have put it in form of a motion. But I'm also willing to accept Tom's wording. So encourage, if we can include encourage in somehow or another and add to what he said. So I move that we use encourage and add to what Tom said.
And that would then be a substitute motion.
Is there a second?
Is there a second to that?
Ms. Ward had indicated, but I'm not sure.
Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Ward, do you second that?
Yes, I do, please. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not unmuted, I think.
It has been moved and properly second.
Mr. Chairman, you do have 2 hands up, Commissioner Albright and Commissioner Fitzpatrick.
Commissioner Albright and first.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear from the employees. I have concern that we are only encouraging this across the board. I think that my concern is when our employees are dealing with the public inside in Pitt County facilities. And that might be inconvenient for some people, but it seems like that's an appropriate a part of what we're asking. And if we could think about letting our staff come up with wording that might include such a requirement. It concerns me greatly if a person just says, okay, I don't want to wear a mask, and I've got 4 people sitting in my office right here who have come in from outside. That concerns me a lot. I believe that that we can trust our employees when they're dealing with each other in a way that's different from how we would expect that interaction with the public. I also would like very much to hear from Dr. Silvernail directly on this, and also from Dr. Waldron before we change anything. I understand, I appreciate the email from Dr. Silvernail that apparently went to one of our commissioners, but I haven't seen that, and I'm not positive. I don't know that that's addressing this policy or the thing that we talked about on Monday. Much of the comments that I have received have been a result of that Durham policy that made its way into our packet, which was suggesting a requirement for all Pitt County citizens. And I think that sort of kicked off a level of concern that wasn't necessary. I don't think any of us, from what I heard on Monday, is interested in requiring everyone in this county to wear a mask all the time. I think that our intent was always suggestive. Last thing with surveys, we could ask, should you make more money? Should you work less? The voice is important, but I think that to me, the medical voice is the one that I most want to hear in relation to what we're talking about right here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a final hand, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Fitzpatrick.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick. And then we'll
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go ahead and have a call for a vote on Commissioner Huggins' motion.
Okay. Madam Attorney, would you, and Madam Clerk, would you read the motion and let's proceed?
The substitute motion is to change the face covering policy language from require to encourage and include social distancing language within the policy.
Such as social distancing and or mask appropriate to the situation or something to
Yeah,
that effect.
that's what I had said. Practice social distancing and or mask as appropriate for the given situation. That's what I had.
And I have it made by Commissioner Floyd Huggins and seconded by Ms. Ward.
Very good. So we only have one motion on the floor.
No, we have two
You
motions.
got 2.
But you'll vote on the substitute motion first, which is the,
Which is Ann's.
which is Ann's.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 hands up, but you do also have by Commissioner Fitzpatrick a call to, what's the term, a call to vote, call
Yes.
a question.
Call for the
But
question.
you do have Perkins Williams and Nunley's hand up, Commissioner Nunley. So you can either recognize those 2 or proceed with voting to call the question.
I think that we need to
Need a
proceed
second on
Or they
the-
raised
in
their
the voting at this time. We've beat this to death. So let's, Madam Clerk, let's proceed to vote on this.
Chairman McLaughlin,
I'm voting yes that we,
Vice Chair Colston,
Yes.
Commissioner Albright,
Yes.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick,
Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
I do not know what we're voting on. I thought we were voting on Tom's motion and I had my hand up, but this chairman never seemed to see my hand. So
The
what are we voting on?
The substitute motion is to change the face covering policy language from require to encourage and include social distancing language such as,
How is that different from what Tom said?
Well,
It's
can I
what Tom,
to try to clarify, Mary, it's really along the lines of what the objective of the survey was, which was
I
to,
don't know why we keep putting a different motion on the floor when they're the
well,
same.
because it's a substitute motion. If I could just say that when Commissioner Huggins put that in there and it was seconded, I don't have a problem with it because it changes the wording in such a way that it doesn't destroy this policy. but it gives the employees good common sense to make a decision in their area.
So why was
If
there a
we
new
don't do
motion
this,
made?
one of my worries, Mary, is that this will become the most ignored policy in the history of Pitt County.
Here's my thing, Tom. When there's a motion on the floor saying the same thing, I want to know why there's another motion entertained.
It wasn't
Because
a motion.
I
This
think
is
this
the only-
board needs some parliamentary procedure around here. And the motion to, the call for vote is a motion to not to be discussed. But you gotta know what you're voting on. I'm exercising that personal privilege of understanding the difference between the two motions. I hate to get outraged. What's the difference, Madam? What's the difference? Clarify.
The substitute motion was to change the language in the existing policy, and the original motion was to send out a survey to the employees to get their feedback in regard to the policy.
So now we're not getting their feedback. We're just gonna change.
But we could do that too. I mean, we could do that too.
But her motion doesn't say so, and everybody's voting for Ann's motion. And I'm trying to understand what was the difference. So
Well, I
she
made
doesn't
the
give
original
the
motion.
opportunity for the
I
people,
made the
right?
original motion, Mary, and I'm for Ann's change.
And if the substitute motion passes, you will not vote on the original motion,
No,
which was the survey.
that's my vote.
Commissioner Ward?
No.
Did you
Yes.
call me?
How-
Yes,
how-
I vote yes.
Okay, Commissioner White?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 8-1.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now we shall proceed with the business at hand. I think we have Dr. Ethan Linker up to come before the board this time, Scott.
Yes, sir. Pitt County School Superintendent, Dr. Ethan Linker will come forward and we will proceed with the budget deliberations for fiscal year 2021. Dr. Linker has staff in the room as well as.
Dr. Linker, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk about our budget for next year. I want to start off, if I can, just with a couple pictures here. This shows some of the work that Pitt County Schools have been doing since March 15th, 16th, I guess, is the Monday after the order to close schools. You can see, I guess one of the biggest things is our child nutrition, our school nutrition department has been serving meals every day. We started a bus delivery service 2 days after we closed schools. I think it'll be today, may have actually been yesterday, where we actually passed over 750,000 meals that have been served since this started. We are continuing our bus service, a meal service until June 26th. That's when at that point, we have to reevaluate what orders are in place and what we can do with our program going into next year or in July. So we will at least have our summer feed program, which we always do. So we'll still have that program at the very minimum, but we're working on putting that together. Another big thing, we're obviously having graduations. Hope you've seen some of those. It's the ones yesterday and on Monday were amazing, fantastic. We have 2 more tomorrow, D.H. Conley and Farmville Central, and 2 on Monday at South Central and Naden Grifton. Those are outside on the football field, limited attendance, and little humor masks are being worn on the field. So, but it's just been kind of dominating what we're doing right now. But the biggest question I think that a lot of people have, and I'll get into the budget in a second if that's okay, Mr. Elliott, is really what's going to happen next year. Every time I walk through my neighborhood or walk down the hall or walk somewhere, people ask the first question I get asked, what do you think is going to happen next year? And boy, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be writing the book, that's for sure. At this point, we really don't know, but I can tell you that we have several committees. We have our own group of people working at it, obviously, but across the state, there are 2 big organizations, one led by superintendents, one led by DPI and the State Board of Education, on what the reentry plans will look like for next year. And we're obviously, the culmination of that activity should be next Wednesday when we get all of our information laid out in front of us and we start planning. before all that takes place, we actually have summer camps that we're going to be trying to start for kids who we know need some extra boost to get them where they've lost. You know, we always hear about the summer slide. You know, this year we're calling it almost a summer melt, because some of these students have been without direct instruction for 5 months, and that's just brutal. So we know that that's going to be something we need to tackle. So we're certainly going to go and we're going to be working with those students as much as we can this summer, whether that's face-to-face or in small groups. Hopefully as much face-to-face as we can get them into our buildings. But that is, again, that is all still, in fact, I was reading the guidelines that were coming out today on that. So we're looking at that right now as we're moving forward. So we all have all of that. We also, you may have remembered our Read Eastern, our ENC or Read Now program, where we buy books for 7 of our lowest affluent elementary schools. These kids get books all summer long. That program has already started. It started in the middle of May. So those students are actually getting books mailed to them, and they'll get books that they chose mailed to them all summer long. So they will be able to keep reading, and we'll be able to keep fresh books in their hands. So we're trying to give as much as we can to our students all summer, and we'll be able to bring some back in the summer. And I assume you've seen, we changed our calendar for next year. The state the law changed that we start a week earlier. We also added some additional remote days of instruction. So we actually start August 17th instead of August 24th. The teachers will actually, because those were actually teacher work days, teachers will only have 4 work days prior to the school year this year. And only 2 days, I believe, at the end of the school year instead of 3. So several changes into our calendar. The plus with all that was we were actually able to move high school exams before Christmas. So that was actually what came out of this was actually, that was a good thing. And we're able to do that. That's better for our high school students. We've been working on that calendar probably since it's changed back in 2004, giving us some flexibility. But this year we're able to make that happen. So again, biggest question on the mind, what's next year going to look like? Obviously, we're working diligently on that. We'll keep getting information. We'll be sharing that, what we have with our board at our next work session, which is the 15th of this month. We'll have stuff together there. So we'll come back to that for additional questions. We'll go on to our budget. As always, we basically put our budget into three categories. It's fixed costs, it's new money requests, county appropriations, which is kind of capital issues. New money requests, I know it's going to be an interesting year, so we will obviously we'll talk about that, but we're not going to try to ask for anything new this year, just trying to meet where we are. What our budget looks like, and our request looks like, basically about $45 million total, including red light cameras and fines and forfeitures, the rent program, but 42 million from the county. And I'll break that down here shortly. Last year, you see the budget request was our budget appropriation was 40.5 million. This year's increased request is 1.8. This is actually what was approved by the Pitt County Board of Education in early May. Total appropriations of 42. Little history, you can see, you've seen this slide before. You can see Pitt County is the green slide. That's our local appropriations. Red is the state average, and blue is the top 50 counties in the state. We're actually currently top 50 size-wise in the state. We're actually ranked 53rd now. You can see we're hovering pretty close there. The state average for about the last 7 or 8 years, the last 3 or 4 years, that gap is starting to widen. Just a population of the school system. We're actually going to be, I think it's the highest it's going to ever will have been. 23,828 is where we're projected to be this year. You can see the rest of the schools, the charter schools that are also where some of our students go to. I would point out that the bottom 2 schools, the NERSBA Regional School and the ECU Lab School, it's kind of hard to say they're not really part of us because we actually sit on the boards of both of those. So we actually work very closely with those 2 schools. Just we started including this slide a couple years ago. I know it's interesting in where the county commissioner interested in the charter school funding, how much was coming out of Pitt County. You can see that peaked a couple years ago, and we expect that to continue to go down again this year. Went down last year and hopefully go down again this year. This is our population of the school district where we're projected to be. I guess, as I said, over 23,800 kids. That's the highest it's been. And you can see the big dips in there. You remember those dips in 2014-15 was the year they changed the age from the kindergarten age. And then the second year, 2016-17 was when Winterville Charter opened. That took and then 2 years later, 18-19 is when Ignite Charter opened. Okay, I'm moving on to the fixed cost. We originally started this budget, which is actually before the state shut everything down. This is where we were being told to project, and this is again, I can read the state budgets and see what's happening in Raleigh, but this is the way we move forward. We're expecting an increase for teachers, locally paid certified, staff, as well as assistant principals. And also, you can see that would also increase Social Security. The state also is putting on an 8.8% increase in the retirement rate, a $341 increase for employees, for locally paid employees. So those things are happening. We know that those two are approved already. The top one, we're obviously still waiting to see what happens with the state budget. What's in red there, just point that out. Last year, there was a lot of debate over our supplement. We increased that to 6%. Started that in January. The way that was funded was the county commissioners gave us a quarter of that money, and we funded the other quarter. The conversations were with the expectations that would continue going forward, that 6% budget would continue. Originally, that line item was going to be about $880,000. Okay. What we were able to do locally was move some locally paid employees, either by attrition or just move them to the state budget in places we could. We're able to get that request down to $528,000 to keep our 6% supplement, to keep that 6% supplement. So that number is actually $350,000 or so less than what it would have been, what we actually discussed a year ago. So you can see the total projected increase is 1.8. And again, we're still waiting to hear about the top two items. There's just a breakdown of the local expenditures. You can see that the $45 million, you can see where that's broken down to classroom teachers, non-instructional support, school administration, all the way facility operations. That's Matt Johnson's department. He's here. Employee supplements. See that? The second line, non-instructional support, is our clerical staff. This is how the local budget breaks down. Again, even in our local budget, 25 or over 55% of it is in instructional programs. Just a reminder of the last about 6 years of our budget. You can see what we've requested, what the actual fixed needs were, the actual what we actually received, the difference, and our final county allocation has its increased over the last 6 years. Question that always comes up. We've been sharing this information for the last several years. Just the locally paid positions. This system administrators, system principals, that's mostly maybe all assistant principals, that first line. Clerical staff, this was one that was discussed last year. We were able to move several of those positions into state. The teacher positions we were able to move into state as well over the last several years. We have reorganized some of our staff in the maintenance department. We actually have hired some more, mainly because we couldn't fill some of the positions. So we're able to take some pressure off some of the school levels positions and hire more, mostly grass cutting services and things of that nature. So you can see we've been able to decrease our clerical staff. I think I said sevens, actually. My eyes aren't quite right here. It's 12 positions, sorry. So you can see we've reduced that by 12 positions, and also our teachers. I just think we want to be real careful about reducing locally paid teachers. I mean, yeah, those are the lifeblood of our school system, obviously. Ones are in the classroom, hopefully in the classroom next year every day. Those are ones we ought to be trying to increase as we're going forward. That brings us to the total of our proposed increase. Our new money requests, what we've been asking for counselors and social workers for the last several years, not been funded. We haven't been able to reduce that some because we actually got an extra couple from the state last year. We're also will be trying to, we're actually going to try to start our own teaching fellows program, putting that in our own budget. We're going to try to fund that ourselves using fund balance. And it looks like the flood insurance has actually been picked up by the state since this was approved. So that one would come off anyway. But the counselors, social workers is one we've been addressing for the last several years. As I said, that number came down this past year because we were able to use, we got some additional state dollars for those positions. So we hired some additional counselors, social workers, even hired an additional nurse this past year. But we also know this is, not the year that everybody's tax revenues are going to be skyrocketing. So the board worked and said, okay, we can put this off for a year, our request. We're also going to try to use some of the COVID money we've received to hire additional social workers. We do know that, or do know and truly expect that the social emotional learning of our students, the need is going to be high. So we've already got it in our budget for the COVID money to hire social workers and programs to help for those students. One thing to remind everybody is 2 years ago, the school system received a grant for $466,000 from the state. That was a 2-to-1 matching grant where we had to match that with $233,000. That paid for those additional SROs we received, and we had discussions about SROs and all that several years ago. But you remember that grant expires in about 25 days. All right. We are in the process finally of being able to reapply for those SROs. We are working on that now. We do have to get letters of support from all of the entities before we can reapply. That has to be done by next Friday. We are told that we will find out by June 30th if we get funded for next year. I've called DPI numerous times and reminded them these are real people who have jobs who we would like to keep employed here in Pitt County. Keep working in our schools, the sheriff's department, the Greenville, Farmville. Now I got to get through all of them. Grifton, Ayden, Winterville, got them all. Okay, so these are people who are working. We want to keep them there. They're doing a great job for schools. We certainly want to keep them. And I know right now we're working with all the entities to get those letters signed and get that submitted by next Friday. And there's no reason to think we won't get it. But again, it's like a grant. No reason to think you will either. So we're certainly putting together the best grant we can, just like we did 2 years ago, which was funded. And we'll keep working on that. Capital budget, this slide, numbers may have rearranged a little bit, but the total dollars hasn't changed. The county commissioners were great enough to us several years ago to increase that from $750,000 to $1 million. We appreciate that. Continually appreciate that. We'll also point out Article 40 and 42 sales tax, some items. You can see some items we've used this year on the Article 40, 42, some of the budget items we've used. The secure corridors, that was the money. We're finishing up that money. That was where the county commissioners gave us money like a year and a half ago to get started on that. Gave us out of this allotment to get started there. We can see the things we've done this past year. Looking into this year and moving forward, we've talked about our deferred maintenance and the lobs on the next slide as well. But I've had our team has been going through all of our buildings. The biggest item there is obviously our roofs. If you look at the list that I have, which actually is 25 different schools need some sort of work done on their roof, which is basically every school since the late 90s when we started building roofs that with a slanted metal roof on it. And this is not, these prices are obviously not metal roofs. J.H. Rose is the largest single building that needs a roof, and that's about $750,000. And the rest of that, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. The science lab, the hoods are all to past their life. We've been updating, fixing. They just need to be replaced. Our ADA compliance at all of our athletic fields. I think South Central is the only school that actually has ramps getting into the bleachers. The elevator chair lifts at 2 of our schools need to be replaced. Clerical or custodial lawn care, as well as a new vehicle, are things that we usually get a vehicle every year. Things we need to be looking into. I do, and the last is our capital, just a lobs request. We've been talking about this now for a while. So just, we do know that AG Cox is back in redesign. That'll come forward. The cost is, well, that was the original cost we put out there. We know, if you remember, that came in at about $18 million. We are working on redesigning that. Matt Johnson's team is leading that. That'll be redesigned, sent back out to DPI to evaluate in the next week or two. So hopefully before we start school in August, that'll be going out to bid sometime in early fall, late summer. And we'll bring those numbers back to you, and we'll sit with Mr. Elliott, Mr. Barnett about where that program is. Plus those other items on there. That list has, for the most part, has not changed in the last year or two. It has changed when we first started, as items have slid off the need, and other items have moved on. And I know that talking with Mr. Elliott, Mr. Barnett, that there is a plan to address some of these. I certainly appreciate that. Now, when the time is right and ready, I'll certainly work with Mr. Elliott to make sure we have all the needed components from our side to make sure we can move forward. But there's some things that we just need to get working on. Now, obviously, the fire alarms, the Board of Education jumped on some of that last year and took off several items off that list last year. So what's left is some things we still need to work on, but Board of Education dipped into our fund balance about $700,000 to handle some fire alarms. I anticipate another $500,000 this year to finish them off. This is in addition to these. So we see that. You can see, I know County Commissioners, a popular question again, where we are with our fund balance. We have gone up the last 2 years. Actually, that's 3 years. We know that we'll dip this year and probably next year as we continue our fire alarms. The projected at the end of this year, because we opened the Kathy Taft Center, the staff development building on Allen Road, that building took about $1 million from our fund balance. So that's why you'll see that drop. Plus, you can see it's gone down a little bit more than that, and that's from other expenditures, fire alarms and things like that. Appreciate the time, so I'll take some questions. I would say thank you real quick and run for the door, but I don't know if I'll get that lucky.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lincoln. Do we have questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, you have Commissioner White and then Commissioner Albright.
Okay, Commissioner White.
Yes, first I have a couple of comments and then I have a few questions. I do just want to say that you all did a great job and the teachers did a really good job of the transition to remote learning. There was a few complaints, just, I think people just not being understanding, but y'all did a great job. And overall, I know I talked to a lot of parents that are just really thankful for the teachers and the time that they took to continue to help the children learn and make this transition as easy as possible. So y'all did a really good job with that, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you for applying for that, as for realizing the importance of school resource officers and for applying for that grant again. I would love to see us be able to get that grant again and continue that. Now, my questions are, is it correct that y'all are going to be getting some COVID money? I know the county's getting around $3 million. Is the school system going to be getting some COVID money?
Correct. We should, for us to use somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million, which we have budgeted, but we're now waiting to see what the what the reentry plans look like, what the expectation is, and how we're going to actually be able to apply that. What we have, our original budget, and I did not bring that with me, but the original budget that the board will have to approve at the end of this month, the school board will approve, involves somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million for cleaning services that are going to be used on a daily, as well as, I mentioned some social workers, but also neighborhood of about 1.5 to 1.6 million in technology, whether that's computers that students can use and/or teachers can use at home if need be. We're also having to redo we are rewriting a brand new remote learning plan and redoing our Pitt County virtual high school. If you remember, about 5 years ago, we were able to start our own virtual academy here in Pitt County, which has actually helped us in some aspects get ready for what we've been doing. And what we are now doing is adding a whole lot of classes to that and really going down even into the elementary level. I've heard some parents that, maybe they're not going to be comfortable sending their second or third grader because of their home situation and family members in the home to school. So we are creating opportunities for kids to be able to truly have daily interaction with a teacher at home. That, maybe a whole third grade class, but maybe kids from all over the county that a teacher would handle. So we're rewriting that whole plan, coming up with a new plan. We actually have a meeting this morning to talk about it, and we'll present that to the board, our board, on the where we are at that stage anyway, on our 15th at our workshop. So we did get COVID money, and a lot of that, and then I mentioned two or three items. There's a lot of is programs for the social emotional learning. It's also transportation dollars are in there, and well over $1 million worth of stuff for our exceptional children's program for meeting the needs of those students. I know when a district our size, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but with district our size, it goes quickly. When you've got 38 schools, you're hiring contractors for that, your transportation services all over the county, technology for kids and teachers. That's the main, I think that's the main 3 items or 4 or 5 items that is on our COVID allotment.
Okay, I'm glad to see that some of that money will be spent on technology. For example, I know Chicago, we're a very blessed school, but also we do lack technology such as Chromebooks and stuff. So I am glad to hear that some of that money will be going towards technology to hopefully adequately equip the schools with Chromebooks and the technology that they need, not just for a remote learning year, but for a regular year also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Albright.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm assuming that you've seen that staff is, Dr. Linker has recommended less money than what you're requesting, and we're going to have a hard time wrestling with this. I wonder if you could comment on if budget passes as proposed, where these cuts would come from. And I don't mean to be getting into your business, but just looking at too much, but I am getting into your business. But for example, with roofing, is it possible that some of these could be repaired again instead of replaced? That seems certainly a necessary, but also a very expensive line on your budget.
That's, when you take $4 million or 4.6 million to fix the roofs properly, or we spend hundreds and thousands of dollars a year, every year, just to keep patching them, plus the manpower and labor, which is what we'll keep doing, obviously. That's what we've been doing, and we'll keep doing that. I think it's important for the county commissioners to know, and I think we've shared with you where we are in this process with other buildings as well. So I think that's, as much as anything else, the commissioners just need to know the facility needs of our buildings. But I know Matt Johnson's team, they will continue patching the roofs as needed.
So any comment on the first part of my question on where else, where you might find the money to lose?
Well, that's really up to the Board of Education. I will certainly make recommendations to them I don't know if they should hear it from my recommendations here right now. But obviously the county commissioners, in my thought was they were pushing the 6% supplement. Of course, no one knew where we'd be this year, and I certainly get it. So obviously our goal would be to keep the 6% supplement and see what we can do moving forward. And if the state raises don't show up this year, then our request obviously is probably, what is that number? Probably $600,000 less. So that number, the gap shrinks. Does that make sense? So we're still waiting to see what the state budget looks like. So if there is no raises in the state budget, then our local budget obviously would not need to increase as much.
Commissioner Albright, that concludes your question.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Commissioner Nunley next.
Commissioner Nunley, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Linker, for your presentation and all of your hard work during this time. Just kind of circle back on Commissioner White's question about COVID funds and remote learning. Understand that, a lot of this is being spent on technology, and I guess from a needs standpoint as well, just to kind of know where we are with this. Do you have any idea or a handle on, or does the board have a handle on how far those COVID relief funds might go into making a dent at ensuring that our low income populations, that a lot of families that don't have personal computing devices at home, how far these funds are going to be able to go to ensure that students are able to, from kindergarten all the way up, have age appropriate computing devices for remote learning in every single household for every single student on the off chance that we have to kind of go to a hybrid remote learning environment in the fall. How far the funds we've currently got will get us there, and then two, what's the potential need to make sure that every student is situated where they need to be to continue to learn.
Our plan that we have, our budget that we submitted actually should allow every student an access to a device. K2, K3 area where we're actually looking at iPads, 3-8, we're looking at Chromebooks, and 9-12, either Chromebooks or a different type of device. But our plan allows us to be able to have it because of what we already have in-house. We're obviously not buying, 22,000 new devices. That's a little impractical. But with the money we're looking at, plus what we've been able to buy in the last several years, I think we've already spent several $100,000 on Chromebooks in the last couple months getting ready for this. But our plan should allow every student a device. Now, again, devices are great and only so good, depending on if we can have access to the internet at home. So that's obviously something we I've been in contact with different people. I know the State Board of Education, as well as the state of North Carolina, is looking at how do we get internet access to every home. It's what I think this past 3 months has shown us, maybe more than anything else, is internet has become something that's almost like electricity, at least in my house anyway. I mean, when the electricity or the internet goes out, it's just like the electricity is going out, so you might as well, you just turn everything off anyway. So it's one of those things that I think now is where I think the internet needs to be something that we consider, or the people, the state seriously looks at. How do we get internet everywhere? Because we can get the device for them. We have Wi-Fi devices. We've given out several hundred of those devices, but obviously there's lots of places here in Pitt County where you can go and your cell phone will not work, so unless we have hard wires running through those areas, and you just don't have the internet access. So, but Mr. Nunley, your question is, our plan will allow, and what we have in place will allow every student a device, a age appropriate device, actually, with our younger kids having iPads. Was there a second question, Mr. Nunley?
That covers it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. It's Tom Colson.
Commissioner Colson.
I don't like local obligation bonds, but your request on that you put on page 11, all the items here, I could probably be supportive of a LOB for these. I don't like delayed maintenance. Having run a business in the past, delayed maintenance will bite you in the you know what, and you get other.
My team thinks so too. Yes, sir.
Yes, you get other problems associated with their ancillary damages that are done, and then you go to repair it. You find that there's even more damage, and so I really think we need to seriously consider some way of being able to meet your capital requests. All this that I'm saying here is basically catch-up money. So that's really a statement, not a question. As far as the SROs, let's say that you do not get approved money from a grant. Where does that leave you?
That means we'll have a serious conversation with the Board of Education and decide, okay, there's $466,000 we just lost. What are our options?
One of my concerns is that even if it is approved, you still have, I forget, about 10 schools that are basically unprotected. I mean, you got 2 SROs in each of the high schools. You've got one in several, and then you got a couple of them that you split up 50-50. But when you got the 50-50, that means that they're not at the other half.
Correct.
Plus you have schools that are not really protected. I mean, you have some that are essentially not protected all the time.
We have an assigned SRO to every school. Now, sometimes they are assigned to multiple schools. Yes, sir.
Right. So how many more would you need in addition to this in order to be able to have the schools properly protected the entire school day?
26, we need 12 more. We
What's
have
the cost
current
of-
26.
What's the cost of doing that?
12 more SROs would probably be about another $750,000.
Okay. Remote teaching.
Mhm.
I've had this question in mind for a long time. How are you going to evaluate the success of the remote teaching? It seemed to
It'll
me
be
that would
different going forward than what we've done in the past 3 months. That's for sure. Man, we'll be a whole lot more proactive than we were, because basically, this happened on a Saturday. We started on a Monday, right? So we are moving forward. We're able to take where the students were in March, look at the whole curriculum package and take what's left of that curriculum and spiral that into next year's curriculum. So we can catch all the kids up throughout the course of the year.
But
My assuming is testing is not going away.
But at the end, what's your benchmark to be able to say it was a success?
Next year, we'll have testing, I'm sure, and we'll be able to see kids, and the interaction will be, I think this year, I think for what the teachers did was amazing. But I think what'll happen next year will be even better to that if we have to continue.
I have to concur. You caught this on the fly, and it was a road full of potholes, and I commend what you've done.
Our teachers and principals, our school staff are just amazing people.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if we can address the deferred maintenance maybe a little further. In the original budget, this was proposed by the school system, we did have the dollars in our actual budget, and made the overall budget increase look higher percentage-wise than what it really is in terms of $2 affected by the ad valorem property taxes. So we talked to Dr. Linker and his staff, and they agreed to come back after the budget was adopted. And we do have these monies set aside in a special sales tax fund. Do you want to maybe address it a little further, Brian?
Yes, to address Commissioner Vice Chairman Colson's question on the deferred maintenance on the capital projects. We did originally meet with the school system back in February, and our plan was to move forward with some of those deferred maintenance projects because Article 40 and 42 sales tax requires us to, from an accounting standpoint, separate those funds away from our normal general fund and to reserve those funds for school capital and school debt. And our plan was to tackle most of these projects, a good number of these projects through this budget process. And we've decided that we're going to wait and take one more good look at the COVID picture to determine exactly how much Article 40 and 42 sales tax that we are receiving and how much we have in our reserve. And our plan, let the cat out of the bag, is to come back this summer with a better look at a picture of which projects that we can physically tackle going forward next year, from a shovel-ready standpoint and from the standpoint of being very comfortable that we have enough sales tax in place to cover future projects and the ongoing debt that we do have on the books today. So as Dr. Linker alluded to early in his presentation, we are working on a plan, and our game plan is to come back to you with, and you will see a lot less of these projects next year when we go through the budget process, because we want to go ahead and tackle them, if not this summer, but early fall. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, there's no other hands up unless there's other commissioners who may have questions.
Okay, very good. Dr. Lincoln.
Commissioner Ward is.
Commissioner Ward, you said?
Ward, yes. Yes, sir.
I wanted to say thank you, Brian, for presenting that, and Scott and the rest of the staff for planning for that in this way. That's quite a big step and different from what we have done in the past. So I think that is a great thing. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. If there's no other questions, Scott, I think this would be a good time to take about a 10 minutes break.
Sure. It is 10 minutes till 10, so we can come back at 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, we are back after a brief recess. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn this back to you, and it would be appropriate to do a roll call once again with our clerk, if you would allow her to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Well, I don't know what motion we're voting on, and I.
Keep it silent.
Madam Clerk,
Voting against it.
roll call, please.
Chairman McLaughlin,
Like that on the floor, why are you gonna make?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we get, yes, sir. We got you down.
Vice Chair
Here.
Coulson, Commissioner Albright,
Here.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick,
Here.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Let me
Yeah.
tell you something. Melvin is biased, Ann is biased, and they even voted.
Commissioner Nunley,
Here.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
Say it down the road. Here,
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have Dr. Rouse to give the Pitt Community College presentation, if you'd like to proceed.
Very good. Welcome, Dr. Rouse.
Good morning, and I'd like to say thank you, Chairman McLaughlin, to the commissioners for allowing us to come before you this morning to give our presentation of our budget request. Just for a few comments, we have all been affected by COVID-19. And just like the public schools, we had to make some quick decisions and some quick movements. I'm very proud of our faculty, our staff, and our students because we were able to make that switch very quickly at the beginning of this year, beginning in March. And I will tell you that we ended up the semester with some really good results, even though we had to just kind of make it on the fly. I also just want to remind the commissioners that in April, we had a meeting scheduled, a joint meeting with the Board of Trustees of Pitt Community College and the commissioners. We would like to reschedule that at some point, so we'll reach out to you. We know that we're in the midst of COVID-19 and trying to figure out what to do next. This summer, we have already begun our classes. I'm here to tell you that our enrollments are up, surprisingly. For our fall, we're already trending up as well for the students who are going to be coming to us. We have moved most of our courses to a remote learning environment, a lot of online, a lot of hybrid courses, but we do still offer a few face-to-face courses that are being held in a safe environment, practicing distancing as well as hygiene. We have also put together a task force that is advising the president's leadership team and our board on what are the things we need to do to get back to, I won't ever say normal, but get back as close as possible to bringing our faculty and staff back on campus and our students. So with that, I have also asked Rick Owens to present. I need to recognize that our board chair is also here, Mr. Gary Evans, who supports us quite a bit. And I also want to say that our Vice President of Finance is here, Mr. Ricky Brown. And I want to say thank you also to Commissioner Warren for her undying support of Pitt Community College. She is our liaison with our board. But with that, we'll go ahead and present what we have for our budget. And we thank you for allowing us to give this presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Wanted to do a real quick overview of the college in the past year. We do remain the 6th largest. We are running about 81 degree programs, 280 credentials. Curriculum enrollment is about 12,000 students. The demographic breakdown, so you can see there, we do trend about 60% female. Average age is up just a little bit to 23.3. About 33% of our students are full-time, and last year we did graduate 1,472. Continuing on with that, we do have 7,700 continuing education students. That does trend male. That does include the programs barbering, cosmetology, human resource development. And we did have 637 customized business and industry training students. We did wrap up. It took a whole lot longer than I had expected, than I had wanted, by about a year, but we did wrap up the Everett building renovations. That building is open. It was scheduled for a ribbon cutting. You may have actually received the invite for the ribbon cutting, but that was postponed due to the COVID operations. You'll see when you go in there, the center picture is the upstairs circulation desk. The far right and the bottom left pictures are what the bottom floor of the library looks like now. It is if you had been in there before, it was built for the mid 80s and how libraries function then. This is now pretty wide open spaces. It's got a lot of collaborative study. But the benefit and what we didn't know we were planning for is those wide open spaces will also allow our students to come in and study while spacing pretty far out. So we do have that benefit, and that is something that we're looking forward to getting a little bit more use out of. As far as the operational requests go for the budget, what we were looking at is pay increases for the county funded employees. These are predominantly the facility services and campus police. I would urge, I saw Scott's presentation. I'm struggling, honestly, to fill both of these roles. I've got 2 facilities positions and 1 campus police position that have been open for 6+ months each, just because of the salary range. You've got to want to be a campus police officer. Otherwise, you can get a whole lot better pay with the city, with the sheriff's office, with whomever. Our facility services guys, again, they can go get a whole lot better pay in private industry. So you've got to want that line of work that we have cut out. We do have some contracted services increases, just like everybody else has got running across the board. And then it'll be a year ago, July, so it was not in last year's budget request. We did take over Mitchell's Hairstyling Academy. That is now the PCC Cosmetology School. Mitchell's, the gentleman that ran that one, is going into a phased requirement and was shutting that one down for decades. We had run a partnership with Mitchell's where our cosmetology students attended that program. We had students mid-program, and we had a demand for cosmetologists in the area. So we figured that was best to pick up and run. And that pretty much wraps up the operational request. Just wanted to dive in. As I mentioned, we do have in the facilities 12 full-time positions. We do have 2 vacancies. We do maintain 740,000 square feet. The oldest building, of course, being Vernon White, and was built in 1964. The newest was the early college. We are still trending well below industry averages when it comes to square foot per operational cost. Campus police, we have the chief, captain, and 6 sworn officers. We do have the 1 vacant position, and they're responsible predominantly for on-campus and the Greenville Center, the 20+ buildings. And then at peak times, pre-COVID, we did have about 4,000 individuals on campus. We do have mutual aid agreements in place with the town of Farmville, also city of Greenville, to cover some of our off-campus locations. As far as the capital improvement summaries, these were the items that we had hit. The biggest one being the workforce development and the interior door locks. These are some that have been kind of pushed down from year to year. They stay the same. They have gone up a little bit. The Leslie Building roof request. Along those same lines, we do have the funding that we were allocated that we're working through right now. We're wrapping up phase 1 of the interior door lock replacements. We've done the HVAC control upgrades is in the works right now. I would love to be standing here saying that we have replaced the roof on the Vernon White building. That project is in the works, but has been delayed due to the inaccessibility of workforce right now with COVID. So that one is still in the works. We're still working on that one. We're hoping to hit that one this summer. So we're pushing forward. The big thing that we are asking with the number of individuals that are out of work across the nation, we are starting to see we're up. I think the number was somewhere around 400-ish students this summer. If the enrollment trends continue with what we're seeing, we're going to see another spike, actually a whole lot faster than we saw with the last recession. There's just a large number of individuals that are unemployed that are coming back to the phrase that Dr. Gould, our VP of Academic Affairs, says they're trading their job for a career. They're trying to find some line of work that I don't know that anything is recession proof, but it will tool them up so they can find work during the recession. So we're working on that. We have added several of these programs and are looking at how we can go ahead and expand now. So we're looking at ways that we can creatively, welding was the most recent example that I have on that one. I was in that shop earlier this week, and we're moving the hours in the day up and pushing them later into the night. So that shop will actually run probably 6 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, just so we can get the number of students in that are demanding. And that still doesn't meet the need for the demand in that program. So there is the skills gap. And I won't run through this. This was what we had reviewed before. But we are really pushing, and we do need this workforce technology center just so we can start to meet the needs and so we can help the region recover. The Leslie Building roof replacement, that one, as Dr. Linker mentioned, we've kind of piecemealed this one back together, back and forth. So we're working on that. The chiller is, I think 2 years ago, reached its official end of life. So we're pushing through that one as well. The HVAC control upgrades, one of the reasons that we have been able to maintain and keep the energy cost low is a shift that we have had to the building automation. We've gone through and we've put in LED lighting. The next big push is so we can adjust these temperature controls. These are learning systems, so we can keep the humidity at a set level so we don't have the impact on equipment and paper and stuff like that. But then we can drop those costs at night. And then based on the external environmental factors, it'll kick the system on at the time in the morning instead of running just a strict schedule, which is what we do now. The exterior door lock replacement. This one is several years out, so I won't hit that. And then just kind of an overview of the campus where we were looking at putting the Workforce Technology Center, where we do have the Eddie and Joe Allison Smith Center for Student Advancement. We expect to go out to bid on that one this summer. Play in the market a little bit to see what COVID does to construction pricing, to be honest. So that's a great unknown. I will hit, it was not in the slide because it was not a thing when it came time to send the budget. The college did receive $4.5 million in CARES Act funding. The first part of that we distributed to students. That was $2.7 million worth of funding that went directly to students. 2,100 or so students, Ricky?
$1,300.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had about 2,100 students that received a $1,300 grant with the CARES 2 Act funding to help them recover from the impacts of COVID. What that did is we had an application process, ran through it. It was a needs-based type deal, so they had to justify why. Very similar to what East Carolina University and several other schools are doing with that. The balance of that funding is what we're calling CARES Act 2. Is $2.7 million that will go to help the college recover and to operate during this time period. Those funds right now are being used to beef up technology. We have doled out several hundred laptops. We have purchased hotspots for students and faculty members that did not have internet access at home. Again, that was a needs-based. We we went ahead and bit the bullet and rolled the dice and said, okay, we're going to start with 100. We have given those out. We have gotten a couple of requests more, so we have bought some more with this CARES Act 2 funding, and that's paying for the ongoing operations of that as well. We're increasing the technology utilization in classrooms, but also to be able to do a more hybrid model, to where we're coming up right now. I'm working with the team on the reentry plan, but what we're looking at is we're going to have multiple phases. So if we hit a state where we have to go back to either extremely limiting the number of individuals on campus, we can have faculty there that can teach with document cameras that can continue to demonstrate what is going on. This was something that COVID wasn't in my playbook. I had planned on losing a building. I had never planned on losing access to the entire campus. So it's taken some creativity there. But the other thing we're doing is we do have the health sciences programs, the construction and industrial technology programs that you can't teach those online. You've got a clinical component that is mandated by some type of governing board. So we've gone in and we've put in orders for an electrostatic sprayer. So as soon as there's turnover in those classrooms, we can go in and spray disinfect it in that area, let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes to dry up. The area is safe for the students to come in. So that's just a little bit of what we're doing with the CARES Act 2 funding. We are looking at adding some additional technology, some additional consulting fees and stuff like that, so we can ramp it up and utilize those funds so we're not impacting the students as much. I'd like to say we weren't impacting. I'm going to say as much, because there's always going to be impact there. With that, I will open it up for questions.
Mr. Chairman, at this point, no hands are up, but we may have Commissioner. We have Commissioner Ward.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Yes, it has been an honor to serve on this board, and I have been impressed from the get-go how this board has stepped up, and the faculty and the staff. If you just listen closely, there were so many proactive things done and so many things in place. And when you listen to the use of the allotment of the money that they got, basically it's been focused on the students and their needs of receiving the instruction that they had. I really appreciate their proactive planning and their very positive attitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward, any other comments?
No hands are up at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I want to certainly thank, echoes Commissioner Ward's sentiments. Thank you, Dr. Rouse and Ms. Owens, for your fine presentation, and continue the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, at this time, I'm turning it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this concludes our third day of the Commissioners' Budget Workshops. And at this point in time, we have, you've heard the initial budget presentation on Monday as part of the regular 9 a.m. meeting on June the 1st. You've then had budget workshops Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hearing from those county departments that came before you and outside agencies. And we have provided the follow-up that you've asked for to date. So at this point, the question is there any discussion, questions, or directives you would like to give to me and the staff prior to us preparing the final budget that would go to the public hearing on June the 16th at 7 p.m. as proposed?
Okay, very good. Do we have any hands up on that?
You now have a hand up by Commissioner Albright.
Okay, Commissioner Albright.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd love to see us work up a budget that included the nurse extender, the 4 positions that social services wishes, the 2 security guards for the courthouse, and the request from the schools. So that I appreciate Commissioner Colson's comment about the roofing, and I think that would take care of that. And I think this could be done and keep the rate still with almost a 3-cent reduction from last time. I'm not sure my math is right on that, but I would like to see that.
Yeah, with what was presented this morning, in terms of our revenues, aside from ad valorem taxes, our investment earnings are down like 70% based upon what investments are yielding. The sales tax, we've had to reduce that due to the effects of COVID. Our property tax collection rate, we've reduced that due to the projected effects of COVID. There are really no other go-to sources of money other than if you want to look at the rate. As we had talked earlier this morning, there would be a 0.32 cent associated rate increase with what those positions Commissioner Albright is talking about. So the rate would go from 67.97 plus 0.32 would be 68.29, which then would be the net effect of a reduction in the current rate of 72.10 would then go down to 68.29, which is the difference of a drop in the rate of 3.89 cents. Brian, does that compute? You're running the calculator?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And can I chime in real quick? Commissioner Albright, when you say you'd like to see the numbers with the school request, specifically, did you have something in mind, or were you talking about the 1.8 that they had asked for?
Yeah, I'm talking about making sure that they get funded so that their facility needs are met and that we don't have to worry over cutting where in their budget in other ways. And I'm looking at that as a possible tax rate, yes.
So right now, I guess what I was talking about was just the initial presentation this morning where Brian had presented the additional positions for DSS Health and the sheriff in those three areas. In terms of school funding, right now, the additional money that we are proposing to allocate to Pitt County Schools is $591,891. As Dr. Linker pointed out in his presentation, there are unknowns regarding the salary increases for Pitt County Schools regarding, a cost of living or whatever it would be. I doubt in this environment that the state would be doing that, but I do not know that for a fact. So I guess we would need to hear input from other board members, in regard to these positions for health, DSS, and sheriff, as well as what the other board members would have to say about additional funding for Pitt County Schools. Mr. Chairman, you have Commissioner Ward and Perkins Williams with their hands up.
Okay, Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Ms. Ward was first.
Commissioner Perkins Williams, you can go.
All right, thank you. We gave a raise. I don't even remember when it was now, for the teachers and the school personnel to get a increase in salary. So I'm curious, did they get that raise, and we are talking about a raise for them again?
If I can clarify that, last year, toward the end of the budget process, you as a board agreed to appropriate approximately an additional $250,000 for the school board's discretion in their overall total funding. There was nothing ever tied or associated that to salaries, school supplements, or whatnot. Now, the school system did say at the time, they said that if they were to do a half-year supplement, they'd take our 250, match it, put that into effect, and they did do that. So their workforce did get that 6% supplement, and they alluded that they would be coming back in this budget cycle to ask for the full year net effect of that, which I think Dr. Lincoln presented this morning. He was showing the $528,269 net effect of that in the budget, but you do not categorically or by function at this point in time tell the school system how to use the county's current expense appropriation to them. They decide as an entity.
Yes, I know that. I was just, because my vote went for them to have an opportunity for a salary. So I was just trying to find out what happened in that extra money that we did to. I think Chris O'Malley read that, and I know we had that clarification then, but I was just trying to find out what was their consideration after we did extend it to them as a suggestion.
So
thank you.
Perkins Williams, are you suggesting or recommending that the salaries piece be included in the budget?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, all right, just want to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Ward.
I like that over and over and over, our manager and our finance director has spoken to, I think that they probably worked harder on this budget than in the past. I think our funds are limited now, and we're looking forward to them probably being limited even more. I feel like each time we've spoken to them, I haven't heard them make a recommendation yet of how we could, in what we've already said that we would allot or have proposed to allot for this coming year, come up with how we can add additional personnel. And some of the things that we have said today really carry a high cost to it. And I think at this time, for us to raise our tax rate to meet some of these needs, which we will certainly not be meeting all of them, I would like to say that I support the manager and the finance director in the plan that they have brought forward. And I understand and correct me on this, but you all did say you were going to meet with the school system later about some of the money as far as the building is concerned, or the repair or whatever, or remodeling.
That is correct.
Thank you.
We will, and have.
Right. So what I'm saying is, I think that unless our manager and our finance director has identified something in our discussion and our process that they feel like we need to include, I feel like that I would like to see us move forward with the planned budget as it is.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Any other Commissioner Scott at this time?
Yes, you now have Commissioner White and then Commissioner Floyd Huggins.
Commissioner White.
Yes. I guess this is a question for Scott. The proposal or the suggestion from Commissioner Albright, was that just to look at another option, or is he proposing that as another budget, or is he just wanting numbers and options, or is that going to be a second proposed budget? Or I need some clarification on that, and then I have a comment.
If this, I don't want to speak for him, and he might need to answer that, but I would interpret that to be that this would be a second budget option with a tax rate that would fund those additional positions within Health, DSS, and the Sheriff's Department, plus some additional amount for Pitt County Schools funding.
Yeah, I will chime in real quick and say, on the Pitt County Schools, on their facility funding, you can run it through the operating budget, but that is in essence a separate avenue of funding. So our plan has not been to run it through this proposed budget, but to run it through our avenues to allow us to tap into some revenue that we do have for facilities. Just technically speaking, you can tap into that pool of money anytime. It is easier to tap into it through the budget process, but I think we want to double check on our COVID impact before we put anything in ink. But I do see a possibility of definitely funding some of their programs and projects on the capital side, especially the deferred maintenance. But I would like to be able to take at least a month or two to see what COVID's impact is going to be before we pull the trigger on any of these projects.
Okay. I appreciate the comments. And Brian, I also appreciate your comment earlier about how a lot of our citizens are going to be struggling to pay their taxes this year because of the economic impact that the COVID has had on everybody. I would absolutely love to be able to see us to fund every single request from every department, but unfortunately, I know that is not it's not a viable option at this time, because the county is hurting financially and our citizens are hurting financially. And I think adding more and more taxes on our citizens is just not the right thing to do right now. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Huggins.
Thank you. I agree that at this time, I don't see that we can add any more to it. I support the budget that the that staff have brought to us. And I also in talking about the school system, when the superintendent said that, you know, the supplement, and I thought back to when we raised the taxes to give them additional money, we didn't identify it as a supplement per se. So when he put that out there, I had a question on that. So if we, as Brian said, if we can tap into some other sources later on to take care of some of the capital needs, then I would be in favor of that. But I'm in favor of supporting the budget that the staff brought forth. And am I in order to make a motion for that, or what? How do we do it?
You can't approve the budget until you actually have the public hearing.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. Okay. All right.
You could motion to carry this budget forward to the public hearing. I would think would be in order.
Okay. Well, then I put forth that motion to carry to.
I have something I'd like to say.
There was a motion, but Commissioner Colson, do you have?
Yeah, I do. The state numbers for Pitt County say that in April, 7,728 people were unemployed. They're expecting that number to be higher in May, but those numbers have not come out yet. They're expecting that as much as double that number of employees are affected in the county that are receiving less pay because of reduced hours, so on and so forth, as an effect of the COVID-19. My concern is that whatever we as a board eventually agree to, and under the circumstances, and I don't know whether this is legal for us to do this or not, but if a person can demonstrate an economic hardship and they can't pay their taxes, is there a way for us to forgive any penalties or anything like that so that they're not additionally adversely affected? I figure that there's going to be quite a number of people struggling to pay their taxes.
I'll defer to the attorney on that.
So you cannot legally forgive or forgive taxes based on hardship, but I can say.
Not taxes, but penalties and fines or whatever.
So what I would encourage, so with regard to penalties, you have a Board of Equalization and Review that has some discretionary authority there. But what I would encourage folks to do, and I think might be the most prudent action, is if before the taxes become late, an individual reaches out to the Pitt County Tax Office, I believe they will be more than happy and willing to speak with any particular taxpayer about their individual situation and determine whether or not, prior to the imposition of penalties or fines, a payment plan may be warranted or some other ability to assist that resident.
Well, then as a request, could I make to you, because you know the law, go to Sam Kroom and suggest that and see what his thoughts on it, just so he's at least thinking about it?
You can, and I can tell you Sam has already been thinking about it and has already talked to some taxpayers already about that. Some of larger corporate taxpayers have reached out. Some hotels, for example, have reached out, and Sam has been swift in his response and very open to hearing individual circumstances and coming up with arrangements that both
I'm sorry,
help
I
to.
have to take this.
Okay, sure. For the others, that both help to maximize the revenue that the county will receive in a fair manner, equitably across all taxpayers. And Brian may have something to add to that.
Yes, I'll chime in on an attorney has said. Sam Kroom and I have been in conversation this entire budget process probably is the beginning of March of not only it's coming off our reappraisal, but also what our picture is going to look like next year as tax bills go out in July and then they're due by January 6th. Our attorney is exactly right. Any of our citizens that have any type of hardship, it is easier and it makes it a lot. It's going to make life a lot easier on themselves and the tax office if they approach the tax office prior to January 6th, if they have a hardship, if they need to establish some type of payment plan. Legally, after January 6th, there's very little we can do. There are several steps that go into motion. So I would recommend to anybody who thinks they may have a hardship to contact the tax office sooner than later.
And on a payment plan, you can begin those payments as soon as that tax bill is received and in July and make monthly payments up into the January timeframe.
Technically, for a July bill, for a bill that you're going to receive this July, you can start a payment plan today.
That's right. We do hold payments in advance if
Right.
needed on an account.
Okay, did that complete your question?
Yeah, that's all I want. Just us to be mindful of that. And it sounds like it's already being taken care of.
Very good. And we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Huggins. Did we get a second? Could we get a second on that?
You have three hands up.
Restate the motion, please.
The motion is to carry forth the proposed 2020-21 budget as presented by the county manager on June the 1st. And I don't believe we have a second yet.
Yeah, and is that proper, given the fact that we're going to be reviewing things at our next meeting, and the next day we're going to go to the public hearing?
It is proper to direct the manager to carry forward a proposed budget to June 15th and the public hearing. So you can't yet adopt the budget. You need to consider the comments at public hearing. If you feel a need to further discuss, then those directions need to be provided to staff. If you're satisfied, if the majority is satisfied with the budget as it's been presented, then you can carry that budget forward to the public hearing.
Just to clarify that your next regular meeting is Monday, June the 15th. This would not come back to that meeting unless you direct it to, but it would go directly to the public hearing on Tuesday, June the 16th at 7 p.m.
It would only come back, I would think, if the board, rather than carried the recommended budget forward, directed that changes be made and then represented on
Correct.
the 15th.
And they would still have an opportunity to make changes up until the actual vote after the public hearing. And if we do the public hearing by Zoom, there's another 24-hour period after the conclusion of the public hearing to allow more public comment before the actual vote.
So at this point in time, if you hold the public hearing on Tuesday, June the 15th, we're proposing 16th, I'm sorry, I'm getting confused myself. We're proposing to have a special call meeting of the board on Thursday, June the 18th at 9 a.m. to then vote on the budget. If the board, pardon me?
We haven't relayed that to them yet.
I know, I'm just throwing that out there. I know you're going to be talking to them just to let them see how things are going to come forth.
We may have a second. There's several hands up. I'm not sure who.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
I don't see the reason.
Do we have Commissioner Albright hand? Was that?
They need to work to bring.
I don't know if I'm in order to say anything. I'm not interested in seconding at this point.
Carry this forward.
Okay, okay, who else? Who other hands do we have up?
Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Perkins Williams.
Commissioner Ward. Commissioner
I'm
Ward.
trying, I've been trying to second Ann's motion.
Okay, Commissioner Ward, second.
The question.
Commissioner Ward seconded. All right, Commissioner Perkins Williams.
I was going to say that I do not plan to vote for any increases in taxes. We are struggling over here, and at a time when things were going well, I didn't, I will not be voting for any increase in taxes.
Very good. Mr. Manager, are we ready to vote?
You have, well, I had Commissioner Nunley down, but I don't see his hand up on the screen, and then Commissioner Albright again.
Okay, Commissioner Nunley and Commissioner Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certainly, I think it sounds with a large number of the fellow commissioners that not interested in seeing a tax rate increase and adopting the revenue neutral position. However, I do feel that if some of our commission wants to see staff come back with some tinkerings, I wonder if moving it forward still affords staff to come back with, for instance, Commissioner Albright's proposals, and are we still able to see those? I guess what I don't want to do by voting in favor of moving it forward, that we're quelching staff's ability and our continued ability to thoroughly vet different circumstances.
Mr. Chairman, if I can answer that, in terms of how we move things forward for the public hearing, we actually have to create the budget ordinance, the budget message, all the components. Normally you have one preferred budget that the commissioners hold a public hearing on versus two. Not to say you couldn't have two. We normally try to see what the majority of the board is directing for that budget for the public hearing. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay, would Commissioner Huggins' motion allow you to do that? I think that's the question.
Her motion, I would interpret, would be to carry forward the budget presented on the 21st, I think June the 1st, the original budget from your regular meeting on June the 1st is what I interpret. Correct?
Right.
Madam Clerk?
Good.
For clarification, I think too, if this is helpful to anyone, the motion on the floor, staff won't do any further tinkering. They're going to bring the budget that you've seen back for public hearing. But the commissioners may always tinker at any time until the budget is adopted. If you'd like staff to continue tinkering, then you need to direct what that tinkering is, and that would be different than the motion that's on the floor.
Okay.
Commissioner Albright and Commissioner Ward, hands up.
Albright?
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify a couple of things, and also given Brian's comments about facilities, I would withdraw any interest in seeing how a tax might help schools pay. I would revert back to Brian's report earlier, and I'll keep this brief, but we're not really talking about increasing. We have a revenue neutral rate that's going to reduce. And if we take that rate and add 0.32 cents to it, I believe I understood correctly that would allow us to have the new physician extender position. If you remember that presentation that we had from Dr. Silvernail, we saw a very disturbing chart that shows that the infant mortality rate of African-American children dying before they reach the age of 1 is 4 times what the rate is for white children. And that seems a really great value to get that position that would be dedicated to helping address this critical need. We are not funding all of, my request here does not ask to fund all of social services. I believe that social services requested 21 positions, and that Jan Elliott, in working with staff and looking at how she could cut, came up with 5 really critical ones, and that we have already agreed to fund 4 of those. And again, this is 0.32. That's not a raise in taxes. It's a raise above the revenue neutral rate. And in the history that we have been doing this, I see only one time where we have not taken that revenue neutral rate suggestion and raised it, if sometimes more than just slightly. Last comment, Sheriff Dance asked for those positions for the court that she didn't really have anything to do with assigning, and it seems like we might try to give her some help with at least one of those positions. But the emphasis here is that I'm not suggesting a tax increase. I am suggesting a 0.32 increase of the 0.6797 revenue neutral rate, which would still give us a substantial tax cut from the current rate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there another hand, Mr. Manager?
Commissioner Ward, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Ward.
I'm not sure what I was going to say. I think we have a motion on the floor. Can we call a question to vote on that?
And I apologize, Commissioner White's keypad is not working. For the Zooming, she did text and say that she has a comment or a question or a comment.
Very good, Commissioner White.
Yeah, Scott and Brian, can y'all correct me if I'm wrong? The reason for revenue neutral is because our property taxes increased an average of over 11% over Pitt County since last year. I know some areas in District 3 increased 20 and 30%. And so revenue neutral is if we don't go with revenue neutral, if we go with anything above that, that will be a tax increase, correct?
Revenue, the 11% is the average property value increase on taxable property in Pitt County through the reappraisal reevaluation we did for 2020. And it basically then allows us to calculate that we're bringing in the same amount of money as the year before. There is an adjustment factor in there for normal growth. So if you had a house build or a commercial establishment or industry or business personal property, there's a calculation in there that allows for that natural growth in the past year. But the 11% is the growth in the tax base of taxable property over the past 4 years. And we bring in the same amount of money, not including that natural growth of stuff that's been added to the tax base in the past year. Brian, you want to add to that?
I mean, that's the technical definition of revenue neutral. And by definition, the tax rate itself is a standalone definition. But revenue neutral brings in the same amount of money that you would have incurred with natural growth had you not gone through the reappraisal process. The rate itself of 0.721, it's standalone. So if you're doing the math, the answer to your question, you could see an increase, but just on the tax rate itself, this is a tax rate decrease, but you have to demonstrate the revenue neutral in order to go through the reappraisal process as dictated by general statutes.
And depending upon
Correct.
how you're...
So even though the tax rate is decreasing, people's taxes are not actually decreasing, correct?
It all depends.
The actual amount that they would pay.
It really, it's based on the individual property within the county.
Yeah.
There are some properties that will see a decrease in their tax bill due to the reappraisal, and it's going to be a small percentage compared to the ones who have seen growth due to the natural growth, which is a positive thing for Pitt County to see that growth. But out of the 76,000 parcels, we'd have to go through each one individually to fully answer that question. But
okay.
You have a certain
okay.
percentage.
I just wanted to be sure that I was clear that just because we are revenue neutral, people's taxes might not necessarily be going down. Some of them may be staying the same. Some of them may even be increasing depending on how much property or how much percentage value their property increased. But we're not necessarily lowering people's taxes with a lower tax rate because our property value went up. Okay, all right. I'm clarified. I just wanted to be sure that I was clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, we have Commissioner Nunley.
Commissioner Nunley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is a question for Scott and Brian. Is there I guess in knowing the numbers, is there a way to have that extender position and still remain within the revenue, I guess the revenue neutral position? Is that even a possibility? So Alex, a suggestion to go back and see if in looking at that, there's there potential that budget would still reflect us staying within that range?
I mean, honestly, in terms of how we have lowered the investment earnings, the sales tax collections, the property tax collection rate, we probably should have been more conservative than we were, not knowing the effects of COVID. So I really cannot recommend any other additional expenses without a corresponding revenue source to pay for it. I think we're pushing the envelope right now with things, not, even though we have decreased those areas, but not knowing the true effects of COVID in this last quarter as it affects our projected fund balance, as well as the first 2 quarters in the new year with unemployment the way that it is and it's projected to be. I would not recommend it unless there's some additional revenue that's identified to pay for it.
Okay, I think that we discussed this enough now. There was a question.
I'd like to comment, Mr. Warden, and I see that, I mean, Chairman McLaughlin, I see that Commissioner Ward also has her hand up.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
All I was going to say was, I feel like our questions have been answered. I don't think our manager, or I think that they have come to us with absolutely everything they could get out of our tax money as it is. And that's why we have made the motion, and it's been seconded to move forward with the budget as presented. Neither one of them, they have been very gracious about answering our questions and telling us, but if we have been listening to what they're saying, I think for the citizens of this county, the best thing for us to do is to move forward with the budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Final comment, Commissioner Colson.
Well, one of the things that I'd like to point out, and I pointed this out in the past, the $1.5 billion increase in projected ad valorem taxes that's created, that comes from, let me rephrase that, I'm getting tongue-tied, of property value that is generated in our taxes is based on the value of property on January 2020. Well, I don't know that there's a housing boom going on today. I know that a lot of people, or I say a lot, there are people that are refinancing at a lower rate, but that doesn't necessarily equate to getting into higher property value. If we're seeing everything else in the decline, are we kidding ourselves to believe that the reval that we just went through is really accurate for today? And I know the law states January 2020, but the net effect is that we're going to be taxing people and based on a theoretical value that I don't think is there. And yes, we can adjust it by coming in with a lower amount of monies per 100, but the net effect to a lot of people is they're going to get an increase. Revenue neutral does not necessarily, I'm switching to another statement here. Revenue neutral does not necessarily mean that there's a guarantee of paying less. The presentation that Scott gave us on Monday, I was looking for it. I thought I had it here, but it actually shows that we're going to go up in actual expenses and stuff. It's not really exactly the same dollar for dollar. And the projected increase, 11.58%, that we think we're going to get from the ad valorem tax rate, I don't think it's going to be there. So we're actually going to be taxing people on a value that I think is fictitious.
Mr. Chairman, can we allow Brian to maybe address the values, the tax-based value?
Okay.
So Vice Chairman Colson, on the values into that question, this is a question that was put forward through another Zoom call that we had finance officers and tax officials with the state and the School of Government. And the question going forward was, we're going to send individuals a bill during a period of time of uncertainty. And we are basing that bill on a reappraisal that took place a year ago. And through the general statutes, when you hit January of 2020, all of your data is past data. So even though we know there's going to be difficulty paying the bill going forward, the review of properties took place prior to COVID. So any county that's going through a reappraisal this summer would deal with COVID values. In terms of the values themselves, the values are based on a true market value between home sales. So we look at comparable properties to look at what was the value prior to the home being sold versus to what the home sold for, and the selling price sets the new value. And we have data that shows that overwhelmingly, if you look at the 2016 reappraisal, that an overwhelming majority of homes are selling at a higher value from 2016's appraisal over 17, 18, 19, and 20 compared to what that value that was placed on the home. So that's the data that we used going forward for January of 2020.
I understand, but that was old numbers from last year. Those weren't considered at the time. All I'm saying again is let us be mindful of what we're really doing and what we're asking of our citizens. I'm not asking for another revaluation because I know the cost of that's about 1.3 million, and I'm not for throwing good money after bad.
And I'll respond to that. Us being mindful is the revenue neutral rate. And so the overwhelming discussion on that Zoom call with the school of government and other finance officers and tax administrators was if we felt that there was going to be an impact on our citizens, which we all agree is the case, and we've seen that, was to affect the rate. And so during the budget process, we came in very early in the budget process and we set two things pretty much in stone. That was the fund balance appropriation, which is set at $3 million, and revenue neutral. And we actually worked, you could say in essence, backwards, knowing that that was what we were going to present to you all based on our interactions and conversations with you all that we felt was the appropriate rate to bring to you. And that's what we set. We have taken, we've taken a lot of that in consideration. And that's also why we had $12+ million worth of cuts, was that we just don't think we're going to generate the revenue needed based on the environment that we're in, that still is unclear as we move into next fiscal year.
And even in the current environment, I don't have any scientific data or true data per se on this, but we're still seeing the average number of days of a residential housing unit on the market in Pitt County is less than a week. And we're saying that the values, the asking price people are asking for is greater than, in a lot of cases from what we're hearing, the value that was established January 1, 2020.
Well, if you got those statistics, then I yield to that because I don't have them.
Again, I'm just saying, I'm hearing various stories. There's probably just as many people are saying, no, I can't sell it for what is listed. So again, I don't have anything statistically valid or a database to prove that with.
And what we've seen in the first 4 months, if you go to the end of April, is that we're still seeing homes that go on the market are selling relatively quickly, but we're seeing less homes go on the market now as that we were seeing before COVID. So the homes that are going to the market are still selling, and they're still selling at a higher rate than the 2016 values, but we are seeing less inventory.
Well, and again, back with the budget that worries me with the people. There are a lot of people that are being held harmless with this COVID thing. They are going to make it through fine. But there are a lot of people that are not going to. And I know several people that they're doing fine right now, but they're living off their credit card. That's going to be a giant elephant in the room somewhere in the future. You can't live off the credit card forever, but we got people that haven't earned incomes for 10 weeks. 10 weeks.
Okay. I think that we've discussed this enough. Now we're ready to vote. I do understand the concerns of the commission and the majority. I certainly don't want to see a tax increase, and as the recommended proposal by our staff and the manager and Brian is to move forward with that. But the concerns that was brought up by Alice and others is certainly well taken. At this time, Madam Clerk, will you read the motion and we're ready to vote?
The motion made by Commissioner Floyd Huggins, seconded by Commissioner Ward, is to carry forth the proposed 2020-21 budget as presented by the county manager on June the 1st.
Okay.
Chairman McLaughlin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colson,
No, because I don't think it's necessary. I think it would have gone in on its normal process, and I'm not sure why we're even having this vote.
Commissioner Albright,
No.
Commissioner Fitzpatrick,
No.
Commissioner Floyd Huggins,
Yes.
Commissioner Nunley.
No.
I'm sorry, was that no?
No, yeah.
Commissioner Perkins Williams,
No.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
No, because I agree with Commissioner Colson.
So the motion fell 6-3.
So
Very
can the
good.
board provide any direction as to any adjustments or changes that would make you more comfortable with a proposed budget going to public hearing?
I think that's what the majority are asking, Scott, that you do that, to bring some of
I
this.
need some input and direction from the board, because right now, I don't feel like I have that.
Well, I think Alice brought to your attention some points that he wanted to see, and to consider those recommendations. I don't think that right now, we're hoping that you can do that without having an increase in our tax. That was a concern. Unless any other commissioner want to speak on that.
You have Commissioner Nunley's hand up.
Commissioner Nunley.
And so I think maybe maybe there's some confusion. We're all not in the same room. But if we're not tinkering with it, but we do have a commissioner that wants to see some items come back. The reason for my no vote is just so that we afford that commissioner, the opportunity to see staff look into it. It's not necessarily a vote to not bring forward. If I understand it correctly, it would still be possible to take the budget as it's currently situated. There's no need for us to move forward with it today, but that would still allow staff the opportunity to bring forward and look into a commissioner's request. And so I guess my vote would be simply to afford that opportunity to a fellow commissioner, because it essentially will leave us in the same place. We'll still have the same budget, and we'll also be able to see what those requests look like. But essentially we'll still be able to move forward and not without any delay. If I'm mistaken in that, I'll revisit my vote, and but again, maybe just trying to fill out what's the best way forward. Certainly not looking to create any extra work, but if there's a request to look into it and it's not too much, that would be the reason for mine. If it doesn't change our ability to move forward when we need to at our next meeting.
Yeah.
So we
if that makes sense. I'm not.
Yeah. I think that you're right, Commissioner Nunley. But I think also, Scott, that the majority of the commission want you to look into those things, but without having to raise the taxes. So I don't know whether that's going to be a challenge, whether you can do that and bring forth those recommendations without having to increase the tax on the citizens of Pitt County.
As our finance director, Brian Barnett, technically balances the books, I'd like to defer. I've already made a statement, but I'd like to let Brian be able to state as well.
The only statement I would have is if you do have any alternative to the budget that was presented on June the 1st, that you do give us the opportunity to crunch those numbers and to look at those additional options that are available prior to June the 16th. I mean, obviously we'll discuss on the 16th, but it does make it a lot easier for us to put the numbers together and to bring it to you and to be able to present it if we know ahead of time. The request from Commissioner Albright, we've already crunched those numbers in terms of totals. I think the difficult challenge is just going to be looking at revenue sources to fund those based on the conversation that you all have had today. So what I would ask, if there's anything additional in the budget that you would like for us to look at that was not recommended by the budget, then please let either the manager or myself know so that we can get those documents together so that we can present it and have it ready on the screen for June 16th.
And I just want to remind the board too, in terms of the proposed budget, you have a proposed budget that does not have a cost of living. And in this COVID environment, with the way that the overall workforce amongst our county, state, and nation is, it probably should not have a cost of living, but that 2.5% was cut out. But also keep in mind the merit pay and the certification pay has proposed to be frozen in this budget for the entire workforce as well through December 31st to see where we are with our revenues as such. So at the same time, we've taken all of those measures. We're now talking about adding additional positions within this budget to expand it.
Okay, very good. Brian, I just want to ask one question about the fund balance. In terms of the fund balance, if there's any way that we can get money from the fund balance and still be within the required recommendation by the state or the accountant without having to go into any kind of problem with our tax situation.
Well, to answer your question on a technical standpoint, if you would like to tap in the fund balance, then you would just need to direct us to do that. I mean, that's what the savings account is set up for. From a state standpoint, the state only recommends 8%. We're well above that. It's not, we're not in any situation where we're going to be in trouble with the state. Third, your policy does recommend 18 to 20%. And based on our projections, we are looking at dipping below that, though slightly, and I believe it's 17.6 or 7, based on the fact that we purchased the Warren farm next year. It's an avenue. It's an avenue that we did not recommend as management to tap into any more than we have. Keep in mind, current year, we're looking at $4 million of fund balance. So next year, we actually reduced that to $3 million. Savings are there for a reason, obviously, but you would be tapping your savings for an ongoing operational cost. So when you get to this point next year, you've increased your operational spending based on a revenue that's savings that we may not be adding back to once we get our audit in December. Also keep in mind that if there is any more delay in the A.G. Cox school process, we were looking to refund ourselves by borrowing money to make up the 3.8 that we spent on the Warren farm. If those bids come in anywhere remotely above the 12.3 million that the school system originally looked at, that could be problematic in the fall. That being said, also in the fall, if COVID has, I know we keep saying this, but if COVID has any kind of negative effect, your fund balance is there to save you next fiscal year. This fiscal year, based on some cuts that we've made, and quite frankly, because we did raise taxes this current fiscal year, COVID is not going to have as big of impact on June 30th, but I cannot speak on June 30th, 2021, the impact of COVID at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we just want to move forward and do what you can do and bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I see two other people before me.
Okay.
Mr. Floyd Huggins and Ward, as well as Mr. Vice Chairman Colson.
Okay, that's Commissioner Colson.
Well, what I can see where Brian and Scott are sitting there saying, wait a minute, you're not giving us any direction. Well, I can equate to this personally. Back in 1981, I was working for Black & Decker, and they came to our departments and they said, we have to have a cut. 1981 was not a great year. And they said, you need to go to your department and you need to cut 10%. And you need to tell us what 10% you're going to cut. And the final shakeout of that was it ended up being 8%. What I would suggest is if I was confused about this, I would pick a number, 1, 2, 3, 4%. I would suggest probably 2. You take your revenue neutral and now you come back to us with some suggestion. We could take a 2% out of this if, play what about if, and then present it back to us. Because you know the line items better than us. We get a general picture here, but we don't see every little single line item that enters into all the things. So anyway, that if I was in your position, that would be my approach.
And that is an approach. We can go back and look at making cuts within each months to come up with the $500,000 to fund these.
Yeah, and no new revenue. I would look at it from a standpoint, there is no new revenue. It would be, and you're not going to hit fund balance. It's going to be, this is what we would do in order to cut 2% or some number. You may choose 1%. I don't. And the rest of the commissioners, of course, they may think that's a stupid idea, but that's what, I personally lived that event.
Okay, I think Commissioner Huggins. Commissioner Huggins.
Yes, thank you. I believe Commissioner Albright withdrew his question or his concern. So I want to ask that. Also, when Brian talked about we don't want to go into our fund balance for operational, for operational monies. And we also have to remember that we've just entered the hurricane season. So we don't know what that will bring forth. So that's just something. Oh, and now that we have not agreed to move this forward, how does this affect us being ready for a budget by July 1?
Well, at this point, based upon what I'm hearing from the board, we'll come back and present a couple different options on June the 15th prior to your public hearing on June the 16th of how to fund these additional positions. And hearing two avenues from two different commissioners, and maybe there's other options we can devise as staff. And I think in the past we have brought to you, we've gotten to this point, we've had to bring to you a table with option A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3, and then let the board figure out which one you want to gravitate to, or modify one or two of them into the final. So I think I am good in terms of direction, but you do have Commissioner Ward and Albright who are now asking to speak.
Okay, Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Albright.
One more comment. I hope it'll just be one more. When I looked at if we're going to look at increasing, it all seems to be for extra positions. That means that money will have to be back in the budget for the next year for each position and an increase in their salary for whatever. So it's not like it's just one item for this year that will be taken care of. We're looking at a future budget where we will start with a much higher budget than we started with this year. And I cannot get away from listening to our manager and our finance director. They have both been very gracious and very patient, but they've been very straightforward with presenting the picture as it really is for us in Pitt County. So however we go, and the other thing is if you all come up with some of these additional things, I wonder if we could do a called meeting prior to our regular meeting so that we can discuss your proposals.
We could do that even Monday morning prior to the regular meeting Monday night if the board would like to. I can confer with the chairman.
Have your additional workshops as well.
Or have your additional workshop as well. That's true. We do have optional workshops for next week, even beginning Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So we could do Monday morning at 8 o'clock as we've advertised.
Okay. Very good. Commissioner Albright.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't make myself clear earlier. I was trying to withdraw my concern over facilities, given what Brian, I think, had said, how he thought that money for those roofs could be found otherwise. I still remain deeply concerned about the high mortality rate for African-American children in this county. And I remain deeply concerned about the stresses being put not only on our social services people, but also on our population, and how those workers that Ms. Elliott has asked for are going to be so critical in the coming months for us to address the many stresses that our population, especially our people that are not as well off as others, the stresses are going to be horrible. And I don't know how we can do this, but my concerns remain very deep in terms of the mortality rate of African-American children in Pitt County and the stresses that our social services workers are under and that our population is under now and that will continue to be under in ever increasing in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Albright. I certainly agree with you with those concerns that you've had, especially as it relates to the African-American infant mortality. Scott and Brian, I think you have a charge in terms of trying to bring back some scenarios as to what we can do to move forward. And I understand that you said that maybe Monday that we can have this as a continuation.
Could we say maybe midweek? How about on Wednesday at 8 o'clock?
Wednesday at 8 o'clock? Is that?
And that's already advertised, so
Correct.
you would recess until that time.
That's great.
Recess Until that time.
Wednesday at 8 o'clock sounds good.
The 10th.
The 10th, June the 10th,
June 10th.
8 a.m.
And you will be notifying the commissioners on that date again.
Time for you, if we were to do 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, would that give you any extra time, or do you really need any extra time as a last minute hurry about stuff on Monday morning?
9 o'clock would be more
If you
convenient, or
prefer
10.
9.
Well, then why don't we shift it to 9 o'clock?
Okay,
Yeah.
so June 10th at 9
I'm only one person here,
a.m.
so.
Is Mr. Chairman, is that agreeable?
I don't have any problem with 9 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
All right, if there's no further discussion or comments, the meeting now stands adjourned.
We need a recess.
Oh,
Recess.
recess till June 10th, 9 a.m.
Until
Thank you.
9 a.m.
9 a.m.